Welcome to our webinar today. This is the fifth event in the series of 6 events, which are united by the name Born to Flourish. And all these events are about how ancient wisdom and modern science merge together to help us realize our full potential and live more healthy lives. And these events are basically a series of discussions, very interesting discussions between our great speakers, Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, who is a well-known teacher of meditation and founder and the head of Tergar meditation communities all around the world. Also, Dr. Richard Davidson, who is one of the most famous neuroscientists in the world, who devoted his life to research on how contemplative practices change our life to better. And Dr. Cortland Dahl, who is also a scientist as well as a senior instructor of meditation in Tergar and the CEO of Tergar International. So now I would like to hand over to Court and happy to start this discussion today.
Thank you so much, Dinara. Wonderful to be here with everybody, and of course to have another opportunity to have this dialogue with you, Rinpoche and Richie. This has been a great delight. We've heard from many of you in the previous weeks. In fact, it seems as though I think almost 50,000 times these dialogues have been viewed just in the past few weeks. So definitely seems like there is a lot of interest in us having this discussion together. So we're very happy that you've taken some time out of your busy life to spend some time with us. And today the topic is going to continue on this theme of the 21st century kleshas. Kleshas, you might remember, are what are usually toxic mental and emotional states that just disrupt our equilibrium, that make it hard for us to thrive and to flourish, and oftentimes create a lot of suffering in our lives. This is an ancient Buddhist theme, and we've been talking about how these, what otherwise might be toxic mental and emotional states, are showing up in the 21st century. Today, we're going to focus on one that is very, very timely and that we are experiencing in our own lives and in our communities, which is social division. So we've been starting each of these sessions with a story, and I wanted to start similarly our conversation today with a story that my guess is many of you can relate to. And it's just this experience of wanting to connect with other people and somehow ending up in this space where you feel divided. So we heard from a guy named Jonathan, who, this is actually a few years ago, back during the pandemic. And he had gone home, this is in the United States, he had gone home to spend some time with his family over the holidays. And he was coming from this place of feeling isolated and lonely. He was, experiencing the lockdown that was going in the pandemic, and he was just craving connection. So that was kind of where he was coming from. And he was really looking forward to going home and spending time with his family, of course, the people who he knew the best and loved the most in the world. And they were sitting down over a holiday dinner, and he kind of knew that they all had very different political views. And so they were kind of being careful not to wander into some territory where they would start arguing, as had happened in previous gatherings. But at some point in the meal, somebody brought up some political topic, and almost uncontrollably, he couldn't stop himself from sharing his strong feelings on the topic. That then prompted the other person to get even more entrenched in their views, and the whole thing devolved into a shouting match. They were literally shouting at each other over this holiday meal where they were really wanting to connect with one another. And it got so bad that the following year they didn't have the holiday together. They decided, a few people were just like, I'm not coming, this is too much. and the whole thing fell apart. A family of people who had been actually very close for many years literally could not sit at the same table together. And we've heard this story over and over and over again. I mean, humans have always had strong opinions. We've always, throughout human history, you can find many examples of where these kinds of divisions have created so much suffering in the world. But we are experiencing a very unique version of that now. And it's not only affecting our friendships, our lives, our societies, our communities, but it is literally tearing apart friendships and relationships in many cases. So this is a huge, huge problem. It's also a unique one in that, unlike the previous issues we discussed, like distraction, addiction, emotional imbalance, anxiety, these things always feel like very personal problems, and we know that they're happening within us and we need to deal with them. The nature of social division is such that usually we think it's happening out there. It's kind of the unfortunate piece of this. Usually, if you're like me, you think, well, this is a problem everybody else has. I'm actually I hold my views in a very healthy way. I'm very open-minded, but it's them. Like, they need to be more open-minded. They need to be more empathetic. So the problem is that we all tend to think like that. Everybody thinks like that. Nobody thinks that they're the ones who are too holding their views too rigidly. Nobody thinks that they're closed-minded. Nobody thinks that they're unable to listen and to really take somebody else's perspective seriously. The image that I thought we could bring into this discussion is one that you've probably heard. We hear it all the time in the context of what's happening in the US right now, which is the idea of an echo chamber. Unlike the holiday meal where this guy Jonathan was hearing from people he didn't agree with, was hearing many different perspectives, usually in our day-to-day lives, we're not hearing other perspectives. In fact, it's as though we're in an echo chamber where we're just hearing reflected back to us what we already think and what we already believe. The more loudly we say things, the more strongly those same words and ideas get reflected back to us. And it just becomes this loop where we become unable to step outside of our own beliefs and views and opinions. And then when we suddenly do find ourselves in a context where somebody might be challenging that, somebody might have a very different view or perspective, it's almost as though we shut down, we lock up, and we cannot get unstuck from our own views. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And as we've done in the previous sessions, we're going to give a very different perspective on how to deal with this, one that doesn't ask us to feel differently than we're already feeling, and to rather that we can learn to actually find within this some beauty and richness and freedom that we might not ordinarily experience. So, Richie, I thought we could turn it over to you, and you could just maybe share a little bit about how we got to this point and what the science is saying about social division and how it even begins in the first place.
Yeah, so thank you, Court and Rinpoche, and it's great to be back with all of you. This topic, this is our final of the four kleshas that modern kleshas that we are addressing, is a particularly problematic one because it really is impacting the entire world in ways that are really eating away at the very fabric of society. And so I think it's something we all care very deeply about. One of the ways that we've gotten here, I remember the time when most people got their news from a thing called a newspaper, which was an actual paper. And they didn't choose what was presented on it. It had no bearing on their particular views. They were exposed to whatever was in the newspaper. I, by the way, still get the paper copy of the New York Times delivered to my house because I do believe that it's important to see what's there. Most people these days get their news from the internet. And of course, the internet and the news that you receive from the internet is driven by algorithms. And what an algorithm is in this case is simply a formula for providing you with information that is consistent with your preference. And so what's happened is that when people are receiving news today, they are receiving news that is more and more consistent with and even pushes people to greater extremities of the views that they already hold. And this is really an important source of division. It also undermines our trust in the leaders of our society. And in preparation for this webinar today, I went back and looked at the data from the Pew organization. The Pew Charitable Trust is an organization that is a polling organization, and it's a very reputable and nonpartisan polling organization. And I looked at data from the United States. Similar data exists for other countries. But if you go back to the 1960s in the United States, approximately 80% of the population expressed trust in their government. 80%. And today, that figure hovers a little under 20%. And so these are dramatic differences in the social fabric of our lives. The other thing I want to mention is there's a woman by the name of Abiba Burhain. She is one of the experts on ethics and artificial intelligence and on bias in artificial intelligence algorithms. And she has a beautiful paper that was published in Science, which is a very reputable, highly prestigious scientific journal. And one of the points that she makes in this article is that when information is provided to us from AI sources, it's presented to us without the kind of nuance that you receive in human interaction, which it may express less certainty. So when I convey, for example, a scientific view, I often hedge a little bit and say, well, the data may suggest this, but there may be other interpretations, or I may not even say that explicitly. I may convey it simply in my gestures and my tone of voice. And one of the things that she points out in this article is that when information is delivered from AI sources, it is delivered with certainty. And the signals of uncertainty are often through nonverbal behavior. And those signals are largely absent in the way news and other information is conveyed through artificial intelligence. And so this is another really important factor, which is causing greater and greater extremes of opinion in our society. And finally, I want to just mention one other sort of background issue just to keep in mind as we delve deeper into this topic today. And that is in our evolutionary past, human societies evolved in groups. And the group was very important. And these were relatively small groups compared to the kind of groups that exist on the planet today. And there was an advantage to trusting the members of your in-group and also having some conflict with members of your out-group. And there is some reason to think that the kind of tribalism that you see expressed in extremes today has, as in our evolutionary past, some distant evolutionary roots in the way human societies evolved. And one of the things that we'll learn today is that there are simple strategies that we can take from the Buddhist tradition that helps build on our capacity that we have uniquely as humans, and expand our in-group so that there really is no more in-group and out-group, and as a way to help heal the divide, which is so difficult in our world today. So I'll pass it back to you now, Court.
Thanks, Richie. So, as we've been hearing with the other kleshas we discussed, we've been exploring both what the science says and also how Buddhist psychology tends to look at these very same issues. So, Rinpoche, I wonder if we could jump over there for a moment and maybe take a look at this same issue, this experience of social division through the lens of Buddhist psychology. What would this mapping of the mind that we find in Buddhism have to say about this very 21st century problem?
Yeah, so in Buddhism, as I mentioned before, we have this three sense of self. So unhealthy, healthy, and then self beyond self or luminous self. So that the luminous self is our fundamental quality. That is our true nature. But then that manifests with the filters that we are not recognize that, we are not connect with that, we are not discover that, then is further away from our true nature, then the outer layer, what we call unhealthy sense of self. And the inner layer, healthy sense of self. But these both are somehow manifestation of our true nature. Let's say maybe we can go into the more detailed level of that unhealthy sense of self. So last time when we discussed with the different emotion, we perceive that singularity, permanent, independent, that makes my panic become stronger, and all these other kleshas become stronger. So similar here, now this social division, the polarization, all these conflicts comes also through that three sense of self. So for example, what we call the unhealthy sense of self says, the first one, what we call three nature of unhealthy sense of self. The first one is singularity. So singularity says, my way is the best. I need to win. Number one, I'm first. My idea better. For example, if you are, so I will not use the political examples. So I will use the sport team. So if you are kind of like fan or particular supporter of one sport team, when your group wins, what do we think? Of course, we are the best. Yes. But when your group lost, what do we think? Oh, something is happening here. Something fishy things are happening here. Maybe the judge is not good. Maybe some under table is going on. Maybe, somebody play trick, or weather is not good. So there's so many things that we cannot really accept, that what we weigh, my way is number one. My way is the best, the singularity. For example, if you and your friend, another example, driving car, and then almost get accident, on the road, then what you will think? If I drive, will be more safe. So normally we all think like that. And I don't know, maybe Richie knows, there's a research about somebody asked taxi drivers about their driving skill. How many percent? I forget now. 70% or something?
I'm not sure which study you're referring to.
I think it's that everybody thinks they're above average
Oh,
research.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's in the 70%. Yes. Thinks they're
Thinking
above
is
average.
above average. So the most taxi driver think their diving skill is above average. So that singularity manifests in the social, then we think my way is better, my idea better, I have to win, I need to achieve first. So then that become biases. So then we all have the our own cocoon of the perspective. Then second, the permanent. The permanent says don't want to change. So we cling on our own view, then now we don't want to change. And then what happened? Special when we argue with others, we hold more tight. And then there's a conflict comes, we want to prove my ways more. So actually, whatever challenge to your view become more solid because of the permanent, the notion of permanent. Then independent, in the end, that whatever our view become like exists by itself, almost like self, the self entity. So with these three, we have this social division, conflicts around the world. So how to solve this problem, we will discuss a lot of later. But the one of the first step is just recognizing that. Just recognizing that these like biases, these notions that we have. Then we look at the deeper level, then we have the healthy sense of self, like pieces, so many different pieces, and they're connecting each other, what we call interdependent. And they're changing, they're not permanent. So self with the pieces, self with the interdependent, self with the impermanent, and from there, then we have awareness from the recognizing pieces is awareness. And to connect with interdependent, we can develop love and compassion. When we accept impermanent, then the wisdom comes, the learning, growing, transformation, all this comes with the accepting impermanent. So they are together, so healthy sense of self. And then we will discuss more about the later, that the self beyond self, luminous self, which is the cause for everything actually. Sometimes people blame that luminous self. Actually, you are the cause for everything. So I can discuss this later.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So why don't we do a little experiential exercise to bring this more into our direct experience? It's easy for this to get pretty heady and to feel abstract. And before we dive in, I just want to mention one important theme throughout all of these discussions, which is that when we hear this and we recognize the challenges these things create in our lives, it's very easy to get locked in a sense of that this is all bad. We need to stop doing this. We need to get rid of all this stuff. In other words, we get really judgy about ourselves. We start really feeling like there's something bad that we need to get rid of. But the attitude here is really not about self-improvement. It's more about exploration and discovery. So it's powered by curiosity, you could say. That is the driving force in everything we're talking about here. It's not about judgment, it's about curiosity. So let's do a little curiosity powered self-reflection for a minute. We can do this in the form of a meditation, but you could easily do this in journaling or a discussion with a friend. But here we'll do this in a more meditative way. So let's just start with a little bit of awareness. You can bring awareness into your body. You can keep your eyes gently open or close them, whatever feels more natural to you. And take a few slow, calming breaths and just notice how that feels in your body. No need to change anything necessarily. Again, just being curious. And as Rinpoche said, the first step here is simply recognizing what's happening. So let's just start by reflecting on the areas in your own life where you feel this strong identification with a particular view, a belief system. It could be something else you're passionate about. It really could be anything. What comes to mind? And as you zero in on something, just ask, what are the positive aspects of this passion, this connection, this belief, whatever it might be? Does it connect you to other people, to something you find meaningful? In what ways is this fulfilling for you? What gets you interested or excited, and what is that like in your life? Now bring awareness back into your body and just notice how you feel. No right or wrong, or good or bad. You might feel nothing at all. But again, simply expand your awareness and notice what's happening in your body. Now, bringing back in a little reflection with this same belief system, the same passion, whatever you might have been reflecting on. Now ask yourself, where might this create some blind spots? In what way might this limit your perception or limit your perspective? Again, not good or bad or right or wrong, just recognizing, as Rinpoche said, just see if you can notice that. What are those blind spots? What might you have trouble seeing when you're passionate or excited or connected? How might these blind spots show up in relationships or interactions you have with other people or even other groups of people? And again, the last step here, you can bring awareness back into your body. Notice how you feel, whatever that might be, everything is allowed. Give Give yourself a few moments to simply be without needing to change anything or experience any special state of mind. Just simply be as you are. You can slowly open your eyes if they've been closed. And now we will get another dose of the science of social division. So, Richie, maybe you could give us a little bit more perspective on some of the things that are happening in the world and in our lives these days.
Yeah, thank you, Court. Thank you for the beautiful practice. One of the amazing facts that's pertinent to this area is that prior to the age of 3 years, infants, children, do not make any distinction based on the color of a person's skin. They are completely unbiased. And this has been shown through very rigorous developmental research. After the age of 3, we begin to learn to be racist. There is a very famous scientific study that was published now almost 20 years ago, that it was done in the United States. And what it was focused on is a part of the brain called the amygdala. We've talked about it before. The amygdala is important in the salience network of the brain. It is key to emotion, and it's particularly important and activated in response to signals of threat. The amygdala is an important structure to have. It's not the kind of thing where if we can somehow get rid of it, life would be better. We need to have these signals of threat or danger in order to adaptively navigate through our lives. And there are many examples of that. But the amygdala can also respond in contexts where it may not be as adaptive or as appropriate. So in this particular experiment, it's a very simple experiment. What was done is that pictures of black and white faces, neutral faces, were presented to people. This was in the US. And they were presented to participants who were both black and white. And what was found is that if you simply compare the activation in the amygdala to black versus white faces in white participants, there was significantly greater activation in the amygdala to the black faces. And these were in adults. Now, here's the real kicker. When you look in the black participants, what you find in the amygdala is exactly the same thing. You actually see greater amygdala activation to the black faces compared to the white faces. And this is interpreted to reflect the implicit learning of a kind of racist ideology that is pervasive, unfortunately, in our country, and is encoded in these brain mechanisms. And so this really speaks to the heart of one of the key issues of great importance in what is causing this divisiveness, and that is fear. And the amygdala has a lot to do with fear. And a lot of the media that we see around ourselves today is the kind of media that is activating these circuits in the brain. And as we talked about I think it was in the very first klesha around distractibility and awareness, we talked a little bit about the role of the amygdala in contracting awareness. So when the amygdala gets activated and when fear gets activated, our aperture of awareness is literally smaller, so that we're only seeing part of the picture. And this turns out to be a real problem in exacerbating the division that we see. I want to mention another very important study, scientific study that was done a number of years ago. And the senior author of this study was Sam Harris, who many of you know from his famous podcast. I think it's called Awaken Podcast. And these were in the days when Sam was a neuroscientist. Some of you may not know that he was actually a neuroscience student at UCLA. And he did a very beautiful study where he took a group of politically liberal people and he presented them with information that was counter to their liberal beliefs while they were in the MRI scanner. So he was scanning their brain to find out what happens in their brain when these people who endorsed liberal ideology were presented with counterfactual information that was inconsistent and counter to their beliefs. And he also measured the extent to which their beliefs changed in response to this counterfactual information. So there are two key findings here. One is that when these liberal participants were presented with counterfactual information that was inconsistent with their beliefs, their default mode of the brain became more activated. So the default mode, if you recall, is a part of the brain, a network in the brain that is involved in self-referential or self-focused thinking. And it's also active when we are disconnected from the external world and we're consumed by our self-focused thoughts. Rinpoche often uses the term monkey mind. And so the default mode is active when we're yada, 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 yada. I can't do it as well as Rinpoche, but it's our monkey mind going off. So that's happening when we're presented with this counterfactual information. But there is a second key finding in this study, which is really interesting. And that is that they measured the extent to which people's beliefs changed in response to this reasonable argument that was presented that was inconsistent with their beliefs. And they found that those people who were more likely to change their beliefs had less activation in the amygdala and less activation in another related part of the brain called the insula, which is also important in emotion. It's really important because it indicates that when we can tune down these fear circuits, and the practices that Court just let us in are the kind of practices that we know do reduce amygdala activation. When that happens, we're more likely to be open to new information, to have a broader aperture of our awareness, and to be more reasonable and more likely to change our minds. And so this is something really very important. And finally, let me just end with a comment about the molecules that may be important in the kind of situations that we're talking about. And one molecule that has received a lot of attention is a molecule called oxytocin. And oxytocin has sometimes been referred to in the media as the love hormone. And it's true that oxytocin is released, for example, in a mother's breast milk and appears to play an important role in maternal-infant bonding. But it also turns out that oxytocin, while it promotes closer feelings of closeness to members of one's own in-group, it also accentuates the differences between the in-group and the out-group. And so it's not all positive and rosy. So if you administer oxytocin to a person, and you can do this, you find that it increases their social connection and sense of belonging to their in-group, but it further increases the division with members of their out-group. And so one of the important implications of this work is that if we somehow can see all of us as belonging to one member of to the same human family, as members of the same human family. The Dalai Lama often uses the phrase one common humanity, that we're all basically the same. And if we can really experience that, then our out-group diminishes, our in-group expands, and these issues become less pronounced. So I'll now turn it back to Court.
This plays out in so many different levels in our lives, in so many different ways. You know, Richie, you just talked about at the molecular level in our brains, and then we can zoom out all the way to the planet to see how the ripple effects of exactly what you're talking about here. So on the individual level, if we just kind of bring this down to our actual experience, this kind of social division that we're talking about might show up as loneliness. And we, of course, have an epidemic of loneliness these days. It's almost at epidemic levels in terms of the numbers of people who are feeling lonely, isolated, alienated, disconnected. So it might be when you're trying to talk to somebody and you just feel that sense of disconnect, that sense of alienation, like you just can't understand them, you don't get them, you don't want to be around them, maybe. And of course, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to us, it doesn't feel good to them. So it plays out at the level of our personal interactions with people, or sometimes even when we're alone and we simply feel alone. But it also, of course, plays out at the group level. It can play out between political ideologies where you just feel like somebody's living on another planet and you just cannot accept or agree with or understand how they possibly could believe what they believe. They're probably viewing you the exact same way with the equal amount of misunderstanding. So it plays out between religions, between political parties, between sports groups, as Rinpoche pointed out earlier. So all these different ways in which we gather as groups, kind of Rinpoche, or sorry, Richie, you mentioned earlier how we're wired to form clans. And that can be wonderful, but there's always an opposing clan, right? So it plays out at that level. It can play out at a species level, an inability to really understand what another species, for example, the suffering of animals. There is so much suffering going on with the way animals are treated in the world, the way that climate change is affecting animals, the way that what we eat affects animals. So again, just an inability to understand and to take seriously the perspective of other species. And then, of course, at the planetary level, we can see with climate change an inability or a blindness just to be attuned to the needs of our ecosystem, to the needs of the planet as a whole, or to specific subsystems within the planet. So this can go all the way from the biology and molecules in our brain to how the entire planet is functioning. And we can see this and we can relate to this in an unhealthy way, as Rinpoche talked about earlier, but hopefully we can widen that perspective, loosen up that contracted mind so that we can begin to do this in a more healthy way. So Rinpoche, one of the things that's been really fascinating and helpful is bringing not only the Buddhist view, but you've been talking about specifically a strand of Buddhism known as Mahamudra, which has this very positive, expansive view of human nature, and seeing what that has to say and what this perspective, how this perspective might shift the way we view problems. So I wonder if you could just walk us through the Mahamudra perspective in this case on social division, how we might just see this perhaps in a new light.
Yeah, in the Mahamudra tradition, so we talk about uniqueness and the unionness. So everybody has a unique quality that we all have unique strength, unique skills, capacity, wisdom, and also love, awareness, so many unique things. So we all may not become totally same from that perspective. But at the same time, we all have universal, that the fundamental level, everybody has awareness, love and compassion, wisdom. So the unionness, that fundamental level, we are not different, but there's a different way to manifest. So we have another example in the Mahamudra when we discuss about the flame. I mentioned this also, I think last time. So flame has three kind of like manifestation. One is the light, one is the heat, like burning, one is the yellow color. So color, heat, light, they are unique, but they are one union with one flame. You cannot separate the yellow color, heat, light from that lamp. So when we not understand that, then we stuck into only one truth, one aspect. So become sectarian, become division, biases. Then we go further away from our true nature. So one of the example is what we call like when we try like in the Tibet, people never see elephant. So if the blind person maybe try to look for elephant, then maybe touch the elephant, the feet. Okay, now I know what the elephant is. Elephant is look like tree trunk. But another person, blind person, maybe try to look for elephant and touch the elephant stomach. Oh, now I know elephant. Elephant is like drum, the huge round. And then another person touch the elephant ear. Oh, elephant is look like fan, and touch to the nose. Or elephant look like snake. So what we call, in a way, every part is there. There's some truth in it. The leg is part of elephant. The stomach also part of elephant. Ear also part of elephant. Nose, everything. But we need to see complete elephant. So therefore here in our discussion, we talk about unhealthy, healthy, luminous self. So when we understand that has become holistic way, that we understand who we are, that we're not just stuck with the unhealthy sense of self or only healthy sense of self. When we see everything is the core true nature, the manifestation of our true nature, and that is like we are seeing entire elephant. So therefore, in the Mahamudra tradition, like I mentioned another example in the past, that there's a sky, then we have cloud, right? So all this weather, maybe summer, the seasons, summer and winter, autumn, all changes, all the weather, all the cloud. but everything is in the sky. And sky is totally beyond. Yet there's a unique season there, unique storm there, unique cloud there. And they are allowed. They come in the sky, stays in the sky, dissolve back to the sky. So normally in the Mahamudra tradition, then how to work with these things, of course, we will discuss later how to remove and transform. Then in the end, the essence of Mahamudra practice is to transcend. So to connect with our inner sky, yet we still can have the cloud and storms and seasons. So everything can be harmony, work together.
So we are going to dive in now to discuss the more practical side of this. Rinpoche, you just shared the aspirational perspective, which in many ways is the most important piece of this. The other side of this that we've been discussing in the previous sessions and that are part of this approach that you find in Rinpoche's tradition and lineage is the practical side of it, that we can have this aspirational view about ourselves, about human nature, the idea that we don't need to change or fix or improve ourselves, but we actually can find wisdom and compassion, awakening, flourishing. All these things can be found within our own minds as they are. And yet we can also recognize that in the moment, we might need to be practical. We might need to set clear boundaries in a situation. We might need to step back from a toxic situation if we're just not ready to be in the situation without getting lost in our reactions. So we're going to step into what we've been referring to as these three methods of removing, transforming, and transcending, which are the practical side of this. So you could think of these as three different tools that we have in our toolbox. We have this overarching perspective. We always stay rooted in that. And then we can use a tool depending on what the circumstance is and where we're at and what works best for us in the moment. So Rinpoche, if I could turn it back to you, we've talked about removing as one of these very traditional approaches that you find in your training and your tradition. Maybe you could just explain a little bit about how we might use this particular tool when it comes to these moments where we feel that sense of disconnect, isolation, or alienation.
Yeah, so removing from the behavior level, then maybe we can try to reach out to listen to others' opinion. Normally the listening is very important, and try to understand others. So sometime, like at that dinner table, everybody try to listen each other. There might be a very nice dinner, right? But at the same time, everybody has our own view. So it's okay to have different view, but then you need to have capacity to listen. Sometimes listening might be the best, showing your perspective. Like for me, many people come to me that, oh, this meditation is really good. How I can teach to my husband, wife, children, parents, And sometimes I said, don't teach them, show them. And then they ask me how to show. The first step of showing is listening. So I think that we need to, from the behavior level, we have to try many different things. And then, of course, if there's a toxic relationship, as Colin mentioned, or there's an environment that triggers all the time that no matter how you try, it doesn't work, we can manage with the time, we can manage with the environment, we can manage with the situation, especially these things at the beginning. Then inside, the inner removal. So inner removal, we practice this uniqueness and unionness. So uniqueness meaning everybody has different idea, different quality, personality. So we talk about the 3 personalities, 5 personalities, so different things everybody has. So these uniqueness actually contribute if we really kind of like taking as our learning, taking as to help our interest, to taking as our growth. Everybody same is boring actually. Everybody has unique, like for example, food. We have Japanese food, we have European, we have Asian. So variety of food, sometimes nice, no? One day one restaurant, next another restaurant. So we test variety. It helps us for kind of like and just learn more about the culture aspect. And also not bored, excited. Learning and exchange so many benefit. So maybe I'm even in the workplace, somebody is really unique for thinking like big picture, someone is unique for to make it as kind of like management level, some is really with the connection level, some is really good at advertising level. So when these unique things comes together, then it's really benefit. So really we need to appreciate about unique qualities of each one. We are not totally flat and same. But though we have different, we have this unionness. So everybody has awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. Remember about the sky. Though whatever these seasons, all this cloud, but the sky is always there. That's actually sky is allowing the cloud. Without sky, there's no cloud, there's no season. And without sky, without space, we'll not be here. So there's some kind of like seeing the connection. Everybody has awareness. Then everybody want to be happy, don't want to suffer. 24 hours, whatever I feel, the others feel same thing. And then the wisdom. So these things are kind of like we go to one-sided or sectarian, but we cannot ignore uniqueness. It's very important. And appreciating from the uniqueness, yet we see everybody has the fundamental quality is same.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So one thing that I found really helpful about this remove strategy is, as Rinpoche is saying, there's kind of an inner and outer aspect to it. So the outer aspect is kind of like plan A, and it's you really being thoughtful and conscious of the triggers to whatever the thing is. So we talked, for example, about leaving your cell phone out of your room if it triggers distraction and triggers you just grabbing it. In this space, for me, I know one of the triggers is just being in the echo chamber. I can very easily just only listen to things and only read things that confirm what I already think. So sometimes my own version of this is I will consciously step outside the echo chamber. So I will listen to something that I normally would never listen to. I'll listen to a news station or a podcast that has a political, usually it's a political thing, that just is presenting a radically different view. And it's not that I will then change my beliefs, but what it does is it unloosens that contraction. And I usually leave that, again, not believing something different, but understanding why other people might think the way they do and believe what they believe. So it just has a way of shifting me out of my own little bubble to at least understanding another perspective. Again, not as though saying it's more or less valid. That might be a different question, but at least I can have a better understanding of it. So that's kind of plan A. We can remove the triggers of what causes us to get in these divided mental states. Plan B is the inner part, like if it happens, if you haven't done that, or whatever reason it has been triggered, and you're feeling indignant or self-righteous or disconnected, whatever it might be, then there's a whole nother thing. What is it that can remove that mental space, that emotional state, and replace it with something different and more wholesome? And there too, I do exactly what you've suggested, Rinpoche. I definitely can't say I always do this, but when I remember to do it, it's super helpful, which is just to shift out of that inner contraction and really make listening the key thing. To just shift into asking questions, to shift into listening and trying to understand. And it just immediately short circuits that I know everything, you know nothing, I'm right, you're wrong, and the feeling of disconnection that happens in that space to immediately a feeling of connection and understanding and empathy. Again, I don't have to believe what this person believes and vice versa, but it just brings me back into that relational space. I'm curious, Richie, if we have a lot of practice in this in Madison where we live. We live in one of these places that's kind of famous for being like a politically charged place. It's where historically a lot of big protests have happened, even going back to the 60s and 70s. So we're this is always a big topic where we live. Richie, I'm kind of curious what you've done. Like, what do you find helpful in this space of remove? Are there things that you do in your life that have helped you in dealing with this kind of thing?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. One of the things that you said, which I think is extremely important, is that when we are able to listen to another perspective, our mind is not necessarily changed, but we can appreciate why a person may be thinking the way they're thinking in a way that's different from ours. And so we can distinguish between the person, her or himself, and the belief that he or she, or the action that he or she is engaging in. So we may still disagree or even condemn a particular action, but we're not condemning them as a person. We can appreciate why they may be behaving the way they're behaving. Um, and so I think that this is something extremely important, and something, I really try to do very, very often. And I've been in situations, you ask about our local community in Madison, I've been in situations where I have had meetings with people who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum from my views. And I really have done work intentionally to help me distinguish between them as a person, and appreciating that they're holding their beliefs because they actually believe that this can be genuinely beneficial to humanity. It may be very different than what I think is appropriate and helpful, but they're doing it for a genuine cause. And so I don't need to in any way disrespect them as people. I can still disagree with them, and it's helped to actually have a real conversation. And this has been something really important. And another situation, which I'm just remembering now, a year ago, I was asked to give a talk to the entire judiciary of the state in which I live, the state of Wisconsin. And we do live in a purple state, so it's really pretty evenly divided. And there were a group of 350 judges, including all the Supreme Court judges, in this room, half of whom have one set of beliefs and half of whom have another set of beliefs. And I was really determined to give a talk that would be appreciated by all, and really talked about the genuine mental health issues that judges struggle with, and the fact that every one of us has a wish to be happy, to be free of suffering. This is not a partisan issue. And I asked how many in the room have children. The majority of these judges had children. How many of you wish your children to grow up and be wholesome and live meaningful lives that are happy and filled with purpose. And everyone raises their hand. That's not a partisan issue. And so I think that we can, in the context of remove and replace, we can focus on those issues that really are universally embraced, and have those replace the the divisive issues that may be pulling us apart. And I want to end with just one historical observation, something that has always been deeply meaningful to me as a scientist. Charles Darwin had a collection of notebooks that he kept throughout his life. And he was very intentional about uh, including in those notebooks all of the observations that were initially inconsistent with his theory of natural selection. And he didn't bother writing down many of the observations that were consistent because he knew the things that were consistent with his theory he would remember. But the things that were inconsistent, he would likely not remember. And so those he explicitly noted. And this is one of the beautiful things about science when it really is practiced the way it was originally intended. Unfortunately, it's not practiced that way a lot of the time. But when it's practiced the way it was intended, it really is a opportunity to be inclusive of diverse views, and have the truth be adjudicated in a very open way. And this is something that I try to practice myself and reinforce in my students. And it helps to simply be open and listen to these alternative perspectives, and be in a place where your amygdalas are not just immediately activated by hearing something that you don't agree with. And that is the consequence of the practices from the Buddhist tradition that we're talking about here.
Richie, just to share one thing, you might want to plug your ears for a moment because I want to sing your praises because you I think actually are a great example of this. You mentioned how you try to instill this, in the people you work with and how you do science. And as somebody who's, studied with you and worked with you for many years, I've really seen that in practice. And I want to give one very specific example because it's just a good example of how do you actually practice what we're talking about. There are times in research when you find the opposite of what you're thinking you're going to find, and which go at times against the prevailing narrative. So these are what are called null findings. Oftentimes you are looking for a particular effect or impact and you end up not finding it, or in some cases you might find the reverse of what you intended. And these things are challenging on many levels, in part because, for example, we do a lot of research on meditation. We believe deeply in the positive impact of meditation, and we want to see this getting out into the world. And so in a way, it's counterproductive to the impact we're having in the world to present findings that actually give ammunition to the narrative that it's not beneficial and may even be detrimental. But Richie, I've seen time and time again, has been unswervingly committed to publishing findings that are not necessarily in line with what we're hoping to find and the prevailing narrative. And this really comes at a cost. Like, people are angry when we do this. Sometimes our fellow scientists are angry when we do this. And so it's hard. It's hard to do it socially. It's hard to do it, in light of the changes we're hoping to see. But yet it's true. It's reflecting what we're actually finding, and it's reflecting humility and honesty, I think, in a really powerful way. On a personal level, I would say it's the equivalent of being able to say, I'm sorry. and being able to say, I was wrong. Sometimes it's like, I was so sure this was going to be right. And just simply saying, I got it wrong. I didn't see that. It wasn't what I thought it would happen. So I think just as a very simple practice, that kind of humility and honesty at whether it's at work, whether it's in our relationships, just being able to acknowledge when we got it wrong, when we didn't see something, actually is an incredibly powerful practice. And Richie, I've just seen that. I've seen that in practice in you, and it's honestly, it's been really, really inspiring, I think, to me and many others. So maybe we can shift gears. Hopefully, I didn't embarrass you too much, Richie. Maybe we could move on to the second of these methods, which is to transform. So it's a little bit different flavor than removing and replacing it. Here, we're not trying to change it necessarily, but we shift how we relate to it, and that can transform how we experience it. So Rinpoche, I wonder if you could take us back to the tradition and your own experience. How can we transform experiences of disconnect and division?
So we can transform. Here is the normally three things that we can transform into awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. So I think which one related for you within these three practice, you can try that one. So for example, awareness is very simple. So we can just simply observe whatever feeling that within us, special for the belief that we have strongly believe about whatever our belief. So we need to listen to our own belief. We have to be aware of our own belief is very important. Then just to be aware of belief people around us. And then from there, then there's sensation. If sometimes these beliefs, other people not respect your belief and you really don't like others' belief, then there's a lot of emotional, kind of sometimes anger, hatred, sad, depressed, sometimes lose even hope. So all this emotion comes with this division. And you can use all of this as support for meditation. Remember, like panic attacks, I use my panic attacks as support for awareness. So I'm not really trying to fight with the panic attacks. And I'm not really listening whatever panic says. I don't really judge, but just to be aware of that whatever thought, emotion arises with these beliefs. Then we can also transform into love and compassion. So normally when we experience this strong, like singularity, permanent, independent belief, we feel a lot of suffering. And after a certain level, then we will have conflicts with even our friends, family, like at the dinner table. And then we have this problem with bigger level in the social or even the global level, right? So first we understand like what I'm experiencing, what I'm going through with these kind of like division of my own belief that bring me suffering, a lot of unhappiness. And then you can see this with everybody else. They have this, the social division, the belief, whatever they bring into action, they suffer also same like me. So then we kind of like based on empathy, sympathy, then we develop love and compassion. And the deeper level, we all want to be happy, don't want to suffer. Even that social division, even that whatever our own belief, and even we bring this in action, the deeper level just want to be happy, don't want to suffer. Maybe they might have even intention also might be good, but it's a different perspective, different idea. So then may all of us to connect with the real level of, the deeper level of happiness and the causes of happiness, to connect really with awareness, genuine awareness, love and compassion and wisdom. Then maybe we can do Tonglen practice. Like you breathe in and take all beings, the division, the suffering, everything, like what we call this ancient practice called imagination practice, that everything become like pollution, dissolve into your social division, whatever view, and you're breathing out and wish that may all beings are free from suffering from this division. So then that feeling of that social division and the suffering from that transform into love and compassion. Then we can also apply, some people might be really interested into wisdom. So the wisdom, maybe we can look at the, when we look at this feeling, we see so many pieces, no singularity. It is a multiplicity, and they connect to each other, and they're changing. So it's just ask question and just curious about the nature, and we don't judge. There's no right, no wrong, but we just continue to see that it's changing, evolving. So there are three major transformation practices, and we can see which one is relevant for us, and we can choose that one.
Richie, again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but curious about your own experience. Are there any little hacks or tips or tricks or ways that you practice this yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I really, I would say, try to use all of these tricks or hacks, as you put it, in my everyday life to the extent that I can. Um, uh, and really do find them extremely helpful. Uh, and there's some science around this that I wanted to also mention, and that is particularly around transforming through the practice that Rinpoche described, Tonglen practice and related practices to cultivate love and compassion, and specifically practices to, we might say that these are practices that are designed to expand our in-group so that more and more people who are different than we are become part of our expanded in-group. And it turns out that when we talk about bias, there is a term that psychologists use called implicit bias, which is bias that is more unconscious. It's deeper. You can think of it as a cellular bias. Um, and people can fill out a questionnaire and say that they're not biased at all. They treat everyone the same, and that's their view. And yet, I guarantee that if I put them in our lab and do some sensitive tests, everybody will show some bias. It just is the case with virtually everyone. And so what is found is that these simple practices of transformation, particularly where the research is strongest, is around practices to cultivate love and compassion, that those practices affect implicit bias. This is not on a self-report scale, not on a questionnaire, but on hard-nosed behavioral measures that reflect this kind of deep bias. So we can change this. And this is good news because it really underscores the fact that there is much more plasticity in these characteristics than many of us previously thought.
Thank you, Richie. It's so, yeah, it's so hopeful. I kind of think of my own life and the things that I found helpful. There's one piece of this that you're mentioning here, Rinpoche, and that you're kind of alluding to with the research as well, Richie. that I use all the time. It's become one of, I would say, kind of my go-to practices, not only with the kind of the feelings of disconnection and alienation and frustration that can happen in relationships and interactions, but actually whenever I feel anything difficult, when I'm stressed out or having a tough moment. So there's this teaching, Rinpoche, that you give in the Joy of Living. So for those of you who watching, I think many of you have probably done the Joy of Living program. For those of you who haven't, it's kind of a step-by-step meditative training in awareness, love and compassion and wisdom in this really beautiful experiential way. And there's one teaching in the space of love and compassion where when you're having a difficult time, as you said, Rinpoche, you just shift out of that contraction and you just think, so many other people in the world are experiencing this right now. Like it's not just me. We tend to feel like we're alone in our suffering, alone in our whatever we're experiencing. So just that shifting and opening it up, and then shifting to this view of I'm stuck with this, and this is hard, but may it be meaningful. May somehow, some way, through my having to struggle with this, may other people be free from it. And it just completely changes the attitude from shifting from this mode of trying to protect myself and a feeling of weakness, a feeling of fragility. It just shifts it to a feeling of strength, to a feeling of agency, like I can do something with this, and suddenly it becomes meaningful. So in these situations, that shift of perspective where you might even be sitting across the table from somebody and super frustrated or angry or some version of that disconnect, some flavor of that, and suddenly realizing, as you said, Rinpoche, just simply noticing, oh, they're feeling that way too. They're frustrated. They're feeling that tension. They're feeling that disconnect. And then just wishing that they can be free from that, wanting them. And then even if I'm still feeling exactly what I'm feeling, just that little inner shift, which can happen in a moment, it just completely changes that relational space. I don't feel like this defensive, like I'm in this defensive crouch and I need to protect myself. It's as though I can be back there in the relationship. So that one little perspective shift for me has just been profoundly helpful. And the cool thing is, it's not like I need to like go in a room and light a candle and do a 20-minute meditation. It's like literally a moment of a shift of perspective, and it can change the whole dynamic of an interaction with another person. So that's another thank you this time to you, Rinpoche, that teaching that you give in the Joy of Living program, I use so frequently in my daily life and in my daily meditation. It's been super, super helpful. So why don't we shift gears now to the third approach, which is transcend. This is the one that's very closely linked to the view that Rinpoche talked about earlier, this very expansive view that we can find wisdom and compassion within even these inner demons and the parts of ourselves that we oftentimes try to run away from. So Rinpoche, what is this all about, and why might it matter for these feelings of social division?
Yeah, so for the transcend, it's like we are seeing complete elephant, not just piece of elephant. But when we see the piece of elephant, what we call there is truth in it. So what we call our true nature has quality of unchanging. So then we have the feeling of wanting to be stable, don't want to change. And our true nature, there's a feeling of oneness. From there, singularity comes. And our true nature is beyond cause and condition. So then the sense of that manifests as independent. So though there's a truth, and also the things that what we experiencing, that even the healthy, the changing, everything changing. So though our true nature is never changed, but then there's what we call the other luminosity that comes and goes, the display. Like ocean has the wave, the sun has sunlight, the waves, light are changing. And they connect with the cause and condition. And also they are radiating. So many things are related with our true nature. So it's very important to see this first, these wonderful things within us, that we need to believe that we have this wonderful quality, and then we connect with these qualities. So there are so many ways to connect. And the one way is we can do appreciation, even maybe write down, like journaling. Through that, we can connect with our innate quality, or we can do this open awareness meditation. The last time we try to practice that, what we call just being. So when we let our mind be as it is, then of course there's sense of awareness, right? We are not become unconscious. The non-conceptual awareness, we can experience it, we cannot really put into word. Then there's sense of well-being. So it's like sometimes what we call fundamentally okay. Why is okay? We even cannot figure it out. But kind of like okayness, well-being. So it is spontaneous normally. And then there's sense of sometimes sweetness, sense of tenderness. So these are manifestation of love and compassion. Like when you being in that open awareness, sometimes when you look around, you see this quality, almost like you feel this with others. And sometimes spontaneously we develop love and compassion for others. And then this sense of when we be, it is self-luminosity. The words, the conceptual mind cannot really describe it. You cannot really pinpoint this experience. Only you can experience, but it's beyond concept. So that's the ultimate wisdom, transcending. And of course, we have a lot of deeper level of practice about this, that we need to go through emptiness and special nature mind. But of course, these things we need to learn step by step. But the first step, the most important step, is the open awareness meditation. So let our mind just be learning. Normally we are doing, fixing all this creating, but now just stop and let it be, and the mind illuminate itself. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're just about to move into some Q&A. Before we do that, Richie, Rinpoche, any thoughts that you wanted to share? And I thought it would be maybe especially good to end on a note of the full potential, that beyond just getting a little less polarized or a little less divided, the idea that actually these problems that we're facing individually and as a species actually can wake us up to a potential that most of us never realize that we have. And so there's a potential that we can tap into through these problems, and the magnitude of these problems can give us the energy potentially for what might end up being a really important transformation as a species. So any final thoughts that either of you want to share on this topic before we get into the Q&A?
Maybe I like to share the story with the Tergar. I don't know, I never shared to you, maybe, Cortland. So Tergar International, we started in 2010. So I particularly choose 4 people including Cortland. We have another 4 leaders, and each one has a unique quality. Like one has a vision, one is very hard feeling, one is very detailed, and one is reflect and also really kind of like community. And these are unique, each one. But I give them a job. The job for how to work together for awareness, love and compassion, and the wisdom. So uniqueness. Then I disappear. 2011, 4.5 years I disappear. When I come back, Tergar become much better than before. So that 4 unique people work together for the awareness, compassion, and wisdom that help many, many people. So now story finished.
And let me say, from being outside of Tergar, but a very close friend, Rinpoche, you are the best personnel selection person to select these 4 amazing people to carry this vision on. And it's something that has deeply touched my heart and touched the hearts of just hundreds of thousands of other people throughout the world. So I want to just express my appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richie.
Well, thank you for the little love fest that we have going on here today. Obviously, we have a lot of mutual respect and love for each other. And, these teachings, I think what we're talking about today, I think even beyond, the 3 of us, the Tergar community, these are really ancient teachings that have been around for thousands of years. The science, of course, is new and really exciting. But I think we would all agree that the world is in desperate need of a reset, that the scale of the challenge and the way it's being amplified through technology and social media, that we're all feeling this, and we really don't have a lot of time to figure this out. We really need a dramatic reset. And the invitation here is that it really, each one of us can do this for ourselves. And it's hard, right? Because it's easy to point the finger outside and assume that everybody else needs to do the work. But I think what your teachings, Rinpoche, what this ancient lineage and the science, Richie, that you're showing, is that actually there's little things that we can do that especially when we don't want to do it, when we're so pissed off, when we're so angry, when we're so confused, when we feel so hopeless, that we can kind of go back to that sense of common humanity. And for me, as we were talking, I remembered the story that we started this whole series with, which is the experience that the 3 of us had sitting in the room with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where he was talking about shared humanity and how despite all our differences, there's so many more qualities that we share. And he was just again and again telling us that we need to get back to that shared humanity. And there was a feeling at the beginning like, okay, this isn't good enough. Like this is just empty words. Like, what are you talking about? The problems need action. And then there was a shift in the room, which we told through the story of this young man, Ronan Harrington, but I think we are all feeling to some degree, which is it wasn't about the words that he was sharing. What was powerful was that he embodied what he was talking about. He was seeing us, he was seeing the world in this way that he was referring to, and he was inviting us into this radically different way of seeing each other, of seeing the world, especially the people who we disagree with and the groups that we feel most divided from. So I'm sure we can all agree that we need some kind of reset, individuals and as a society. And the invitation here is that there's something here where we can begin perhaps to embody a little bit of what the Dalai Lama was trying to impart to us that day, and that he has so beautifully embodied in his life. So why don't we shift into, we've got a few minutes left, some really, really great questions. I think this one first is a great one for you, Rinpoche. It's very simple. So one of our Russian viewers writes, what practice helps to deal with anger in the moment of a disagreement? Like when it's actually happening, what can we do when we feel angry?
Yeah, so first step is just catch the anger. So normally we whether suppressed, we lost with anger, but we are not to be aware of anger. So just catch, oh, I'm angry. And then maybe watch the sensation in the body. Then when you watch the sensation, then anger becomes support for awareness. Then you can look at the other person. Maybe they are not agree, they are also angry, but the deeper level, he or she, whatever the person, also want to be happy, don't want to suffer. But then they might have different view. The view is the filter, sometimes what we call a right view, wrong view, whatever, ignorant. Then that anger become, that love and compassion become anger. So deeper level, to separate, like Richie mentioned before, the action and the person is separate. So wish that may you have happiness and the causes of happiness. So here we emphasize about the cause of happiness, meaning that being more connected with the love and compassion, innate love and compassion, and awareness and wisdom that transform that whatever we feel like the action is not right, or whatever we feel that harm to many other people, all these are transformed, that wish that person will be full of love and compassion, full of the positive actions to helping many people. So we just wish that.
Thank you so much. Richie, any comments from you? Anything on the science on this particular one?
Well, there is, quite a bit of science, particularly focused on the impact of awareness and of love and compassion and Rinpoche uses the term okayedness, kind of fundamental okayedness, and the science shows that these practices can be can be done anywhere, anytime. They don't need to be done for a long time, and the effects can be seen pretty quickly. And one of the implications from the scientific research really is that it's easier than you think, because these are part of our innate qualities. They are the nature of our own mind, and when we can tap into that, change really can be seen fairly readily. So it's not to say that more practice isn't good. It is good, and it leads to these changes becoming more enduring, more spontaneous, but it's possible to see these changes very early on.
So there's a number of questions here that get to the reality that in some cases there is real harm being done, and how we work with that, how we deal with these practices. And it actually reminds me of that young man Ronan that we talked about, because that was basically what he was pointing to. In fact, he said when he was with the Dalai Lama, we were all with the Dalai Lama, he said something like, "Yeah, this is all great, Your Holiness, but nice words don't do a lot of good when the Taliban is pointing a gun at your head." And that was an especially powerful statement because there was a young woman who was also part of this group, was one of these young leaders who actually had been fighting for women's rights and for the education of young women in Afghanistan, and that was her reality. She had had to flee because her life and the life of the young women she was taking care of and serving were genuinely under threat. So this was not just a strong statement. This was like a reality that he was pointing to. And I think that was kind of what he was pointing out. Like, yeah, this is all great, but what do you actually do in a moment like that where harm is really being done or is at risk of being done? Like people are really being hurt. So there's a few questions like that, and I'll just read one of them, but it kind of points to this bigger issue. So somebody writes, how do we respond ethically and effectively to the rampant cruelty and chaos among US leaders. This is not about in and out groups, but a response to brutality and injustice. So I'm sure there's versions of this in many countries and many places in the world, but I think it's that bigger issue of how to deal with when real harm may be happening.
Yeah, so normally what we call, it's very important that we need to develop love and compassion, but it doesn't mean love and compassion that I'm practitioner of love and compassion and I have to say everything's okay, you know. Even you do wrong thing, I have to say you're okay because I'm the practitioner of love and compassion. So what we call love and compassion combined together with the wisdom, combined together with the awareness. We need to see. And then also we need to bring this into action. Like even Buddha is like follow social justice, but it's not the violence way. It's non-violence. Through the motivation of love and compassion, and through persistency, and through kind of like promoting that the whatever related with the awareness, compassion, wisdom, the action, the direction, the way. So it's not like that, okay, we are compassionate and then become passive, but we have to use many creativity. So normally what we call 4 activities. So the first is what we call peace activity. Be kind, compassionate, and be nice. For example, if you have children, the first how you have to help children first is peaceful activity. So be kind, be nice, smile, and caring, all these things. But then sometimes children need what we call enhance or development support, meaning reward sometime, or enhancing their skills, or sometimes even the gifts. So something like that, boost, develop activity. And number 3, what we call the magnetizing activity, meaning like you become source of inspiration, inspire. So you become like role model, like example, like automatically mind connect to that. So like magnetizing feel. And the last one is what we call powerful activity. So powerful activity, there's a boundary, there's a ground rule for the children if they do a lot of illegal things, so harm to many other people. So there's some kind of force there, sometimes what we call the wrathful activity. But all this activity comes through the intention of love and compassion and awareness and wisdom.
Thank you, Richie.
One thing to add, yeah, it's these are really challenging times, and in my role as a leader of a scientific organization with science under attack here in the U.S., it's been very, very challenging, and I have been very much these days in the situation of speaking out in a very public way, forcefully, and at the same time doing it in a way that minimizes further polarization. And so it really is been a kind of acid test of all of this to see if we can really both be very strong and forceful and fierce in our opposition to policies that we think are detrimental to humanity, but at the same time not be further contributing to the divisiveness and chaos that we are, and the mess that we're in now. And so it's been, I've actually found the challenge to be very healthy and rewarding, and an opportunity to really exemplify that there's a different mode of being. We can actually be civil with one another. There are, I think lots of people agree that there's a lot of inefficiencies in the government. So there are real problems to deal with. But we can disagree about the methods, but let's not denigrate the other as not as subhuman, or in any way diminish the understanding that every human being really shares this same basic wish to be happy and to be free of suffering. And our political opponents are motivated by those same wishes. They just happen to live in a different reality. And so I think that we could do this in a way that is very forceful, and that doesn't in any way feel like we're retreating in the kind of way that Rinpoche described, where we just say everything is love and everything is okay. It's not, but we can do it in a way that reflects the qualities of awareness, loving compassion, and wisdom.
Yeah, thinking of this question, and they're actually looking through all the questions, it feels like almost half of them are something related to this, something on this theme. So you can just sense that around the world, this is something that we're all dealing with. I was in January in Ahmedabad, sorry for my pronunciation, any Indians who might be watching, Ahmedabad, I think it's pronounced. But this is one of the places where Gandhi spent a lot of his life. And Gandhi Ashram is located, and we visited. I was with a group of people. We visited Gandhi Ashram, and I think his life and example was such a beautiful demonstration of exactly what Rinpoche and Richie, the two of you, are talking about, and what we see in other amazing leaders. And it's exactly what you just said. He was somehow able to have this fierce and incredibly strong capacity to stand up to injustice at great personal cost to himself and great personal risk. I mean, he ultimately, of course, was assassinated, but yet never demonizing other people, not needing to tear everybody else down to build himself up. And what you see, I think one common thread that you find, for example, with him, the Dalai Lama equally, is the deep inner work that they did. He spent years at that ashram of doing deep personal reflection. He knew that the problems were there. He could have just immediately launched himself into his, the political movement, but he didn't. He actually spent years of deep personal spiritual reflection and practice. And similarly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he came out and was in the room with us, he came out of that every day having done 5 hours of meditation. I think by all accounts, he gets up super early in the morning and meditates and practices for 5 hours. So when he walks out of those doors and sits down with us, he's not just spouting some nice theory about humanity. He is feeling and embodying and genuinely seeing the world that way because he's been practicing it. So to me, that's been there's so many great examples of this, of how we can transform not just what we believe, but our very being. So we are experiencing the world and other people a different way. So being in Gandhi Ashram, or in a place like, where we can feel that, is to me was so inspiring. So another question, maybe Richie, we could throw this one to you, is about habits and how we deal with all of the strong conditioning we have. So one of our Spanish-speaking viewers writes, meditation proposes that we can change our mental habits, no matter how ingrained they may be, even if I'm very old. Even if they have been with us for so many years, or if they continue to be reinforced by everything around us. How can we subjugate the conditioning messages that we see in our daily lives? So, Richie, I don't know if you want to take this one. I imagine,
Yeah,
Rinpoche, you also have thoughts on this.
sure. I'm happy to say a few things. One is that plasticity is present throughout one's life. Doesn't matter how old you are. We know definitively that plasticity is present as long as you are alive. So that's the good news.
And could you
Uh,
say, just to make sure everybody understands, a brief kind
yeah,
of lay explanation? Just means the ability
sure.
to change of the
The
biology.
ability to change, your brain is changeable. We know, just to give one very specific example, one component of neuroplasticity is the growth of new brain cells every day. Every person generates several thousand new brain cells every day. And we know that that is true even to your last dying day. That's been definitively shown. It would take a while to go through the methods of how it was done, but it was definitively shown. We know this to be true. So plasticity is occurring throughout life. So it is possible to change. And with regard to changing habits that have been moving in a particular direction for a long time, it could be hard. And nobody really says it's easy. But one of the important qualities of the approach that Rinpoche teaches that has been so meaningful to me, and you've heard Rinpoche use this phrase today, and also probably every time we've been together, and that is it's a step-by-step approach. You do one small step at a time, and that is the way you really see change occur. And our own scientific evidence shows that even a few minutes a day of practice can be helpful. I often use the analogy of brushing our teeth. Somehow we've all learned to brush our teeth for a few minutes a day. And the scientific evidence shows that even if we spend as little time each day as we spend brushing our teeth, nourishing our mind with awareness, loving compassion, and wisdom, connecting to these qualities, this world would really be a different place.
Thank
Rinpoche.
you, Richie. Rinpoche, we're maybe at our last moment here. Anything you want to share, either on this question or just a final thought on the importance of what we're talking about here?
Maybe I will say story with my mom. So I'm naughty boy when I was young. I don't want to take the orders from the elders. My nature is a little bit rebellion. So I make a lot of mess sometimes. And then my mom sometimes call me, but she never say, you not good. She say, your action is not good. So that is really kind of like a deep practice for me, that no matter who they are, yes, there's wrong action. There's need justice. There need so many different things we need to kind of like help for the social level. But at the same time, I really believe and see the fundamental level, everybody has this basic innate goodness.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche and Richie. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say this. Your teachings and work and thoughts that you've shared today have been really inspiring and helpful. As you all know, we're going to continue this next week for our final session. And we've mentioned many times that we are planning to stay in touch with you as we continue working on the book that we are going to write on these same topics, that we very much want to stay in touch, both so we can hear your stories, so we can share some updates. And we're also planning to take a lot of the questions and actually answer them in the months and year ahead as a way to just stay in conversation. So I think most of you have probably already signed up for the newsletter and the email lists. I think it's both available in Zoom and YouTube, but if you haven't signed up yet and you'd like to, and this is of interest to you, please go ahead and do that. And again, just a huge bow of gratitude to the two of you, Richie and Rinpoche, and for all of you for listening, and for the great Tergar team that is hosting this behind the scenes. So On that note, Dinara, I will turn it back to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Court, for you as well, and for three of you for such an honest talk. And I think that this talk embodied all your personal wisdom, personal experience in these, very challenging life situations sometimes. So it's a good example for us. And before we all close this discussion, I would like you to do one important thing that we didn't do in the beginning, is to take a language poll, which is very important for us as organizers, to see how many of us are listening to what languages on Zoom. On YouTube, of course, it's all English, but on Zoom, please click on the right, for you, the right language, yes, that you've been using today. Okay, couple more seconds. Yes, thank you so much for taking part in this poll for everyone. So 51% Chinese, 17% Russian, 6% Spanish, 9% French, 4% German, 7% Portuguese, and 6% English, and of course English on YouTube. Thanks so much. And a couple of announcements before we end. So can we see some slides, please? Again, you might already heard this news, but if not, we have this. I think there's a previous slide about anywhere, anytime meditation. Yes, yes, anytime, anywhere meditation. This is a great opportunity to really see how you don't need any special circumstances to meditate. You can meditate while you are worrying, walking, arguing, or having some productive talks. Like anything can be a part of your meditation. During this event on May 31st and June 1st, you can actually learn these ways to integrate your meditation with your life, with Mingyur Rinpoche himself. Please join it. And if you want a deeper dive into meditation techniques that Rinpoche teaches us, and to do it in a structured way, and again in your own self-paced way, taking your own time, you can do it using online platform Joy of Living. And I think in this sequence it was the first slide. Yes, so here you can actually join Joy of Living and learn all these techniques about deepening, recognizing of these innate qualities that you already have, qualities of awareness, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom. And it's a wonderful journey and very structured again, and very helpful. The next slide, please. This is one of the testimonies of the people who are already on the path of Joy of Living. And yes, here also some opportunities that you can enjoy if you are the part of Joy of Living path. You are surrounded from the very beginning by this wonderful community of meditators from all over the world that help each other to really integrate and get these new habits of meditation, make them really the part of our daily routine. So community circles are these meetings with Team Olsted, senior Tergar instructor, and you can also enjoy one-on-one interviews with Tergar guides if you are registered on the platform. Next, please. Yes, and this is a 10-day free trial on joy.tergar.org. And yes, 10-day free trial, so you can see all the platform and decide further on. Next. Yes, and this is the last, actually the invitation to the last meeting, last session with Dr. Richard Davidson, Dr. Cortland Dahl, and Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, which will happen next Saturday. It's called Establishing Lifelong Practices for Personal Transformation. It is actually about challenging of setting up a fundamental practice and sustainable practice habits. So how to integrate it and how to make it lifelong path. Yes, when we are so busy. So please join us next Saturday for this event. And again, we will hear this wonderful and very rich conversation of these three distinguished speakers. And the last but not the least, if you are really enjoying and find these events transformative, we would like to go on with offering free events like this, so you can be a part of it and then donate via this QR code or via links that you can find on chats. And yes, please, if you have this opportunity, donate to make this mission of Tergar more accessible to more people in the world. So thank you again so much. Thank you all for your questions and for your participation. And hopefully see you next Saturday and on other programs of Tergar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dinara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.